Welcome to Garden Plants with Jim Putnam. Let's talk Munchkin Oakleaf Hydrangeas. So this is Munchkin Oakleaf Hydrangea. This is a National Arboretum introduction. It was picked for its really super compact habit. Blooms heavier than our regular non-named cultivars of Oakleaf Hydrangea. Big giant inflorescences on top of a very compact plant. Of course, these are Oakleaf Hydrangeas because they have very large oak leaf-like leaves on them, which look fantastic all season long. Really nice dark green color, very sturdy, kind of thick leaves on them. And then in the fall, they'll turn kind of a burgundy color. If you're in the deep south, those burgundy leaves will just stay on there. I've been down along the Gulf Coast in the winter time, and it's amazing. They'll just hold that color all winter long. In northern areas, they tend to shed the leaves a little bit earlier than that, but you can see here we are in middle May and how large these inflorescences are on these incredibly compact plants. So on the tag, Munchkin is going to say it gets 3 to 4 feet tall and 3 to 4 feet wide. And I'm sure they're maintainable in that height range, but again, plants don't read plant tags, and eventually I think they will get taller. But on the way to that, they just can kind of naturally stay more compact, like you see here, whereas just the native Oakleaf Hydrangeas can really stretch out. These panicles will start off kind of almost a little bit of green hue to them, and then they get pretty bright white like they are now, and then eventually will fade to pink, and then they fade to kind of a papery color in the winter time. They make great cut flowers. A lot of people will bring them in even after, after they've faded and use them as cut flowers in the winter time. These inflorescences on the outside here aren't the actual flower parts. You can look down in here behind it to the actual flower parts that are attracting pollinators in. These will, this one's probably about 8 inches long, something like that. That's probably on average about what you're going to get on Munchkin. They'll, on the straight species, they can end up a bit bigger than this, but they get so many panicles on these tiny plants. It's really quite showy. Oakleaf hydrangeas are native to a pretty wide swath in the eastern United States. They're hardy in zone 5 and down to zone 9, so a very wide range of area where these can be grown. It probably has some impact though on sun or shade. As you get up to zone 5, you can definitely put these out in a little more sun. And as you get down toward the Gulf, really far south, they really do need to be in definitely afternoon shade at least. They can be in some morning sun. Sometimes with hydrangeas, like this, you might find that they're stretching a lot, looking for light, and you probably don't have them in quite enough light, and you're going to sacrifice some flowers if you don't get enough light on them. So if you're seeing them stretch, you might want to think about moving them out to a slightly sunnier spot. If you're seeing them burn, obviously, you need to slide them maybe into a little bit more shade. But, they're pretty adaptable, honestly. I have found with Oakleaf hydrangeas, even if they burn a little bit that first year, sometimes they'll adapt to it in future years. So where are we going to use Munchkin Oakleaf Hydrangea? Well, definitely if you have a smaller garden. That would be the case with ours in Raleigh, North Carolina. We're on a very small lot, and I just don't have room for an Oakleaf Hydrangea that gets 14 or 15 feet tall. So one that I can maintain 3 to 4 feet tall is kind of perfect for those conditions. Great in a mixed border, great in a woodland garden, great for those of you who like to grow things for dried flowers. Great is just a one-off specimen plant. It's so showy. It's definitely showy enough to command attention, just all by itself, or mass planted, even more showy at that point. These will definitely need a sheltered location in colder areas. So if you're in zone 5A, 5B, you might want to think about not having it right out in the middle of the garden where the winter wind is going to burn it back. These carry their flower buds through the winter, and if they're those buds are going to be susceptible potentially to cold damage during the winter. Maybe if it doesn't kill the plant, it will definitely lessen your flower. So protected space. They like moist, well-drained conditions, or even slightly moist conditions. Oakleaf hydrangeas are really good at letting you know they're dry, and they'll actually wilt. These big giant leaves will, wilt a bit on you. Keep them evenly moist when you first plant them. They will become pretty drought tolerant over some period of time, but initially, this is a plant you're going to want to keep an eye on. If you plant it and just forget it, it's probably not going to perform at its optimum, ability to flower and to grow, during the growing season. So I would check it occasionally, dig down around it a couple inches. If it's dry, water it very thoroughly, and then let it dry out between waterings. Again, once it's established for a few years, there'll be less and less of that type of maintenance that you'll have to do on it. These like slightly acidic soils, but they will tolerate most soil types as long as it doesn't want to sit in water, but again, keep it kind of moist. I'll fertilize all of my shrubs once a year in the spring with an organic fertilizer. These native hydrangea quercifolias probably don't need any additional fertilizer from you. As long as you're keeping weeds away from them, keeping it mulched, again, watering it when it needs to be watered, that's pretty much all the maintenance. Pruning wise, super important. Don't prune these anytime other than after they finish flowering sometime in early June if you need to. Again, you're buying this particular variety so you don't have to do any pruning on it. It's kind of going to grow evenly, but plant it in a space where you can let it get 3 or 4 feet tall without having to do a lot of pruning on it. But that's one of the values of this one, is you're just not going to have to prune it. If you get a crazy limb on it somewhere, go ahead and take that off whenever. It wasn't going to be of any benefit to you anyway. So 12 months out of the year you can do that. Other than that, there's really not a whole lot of maintenance to do on these. They're just fantastic additions to the garden, and they're 4-season plants. You're going to get great leaves coming out, and then these flowers are just basically all season long. They're going through stages of various colors, and then you get the amazing fall color, which tends to linger a little longer the further south you are. But this is Munchkin Oakleaf Hydrangea, just a great addition to any garden.